If you've ever played Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, you may have noticed these symbols or art forms that encompass the terrain as you fly in your janky contraption or maybe parachute from a sky island. And in the game, they play an important role as a story mechanism, right? So as you fly there and you kind of figure out where the dragon tear is, it tells a story, right? It turns out, though, this is something that is based on reality. Humans have been doing this as far back as we know, 2,000 years ago in Peru. And we can find these kinds of formations all over the world. It's really poetic because it tells a story of perspective. You might be right next to a rock and not notice it's part of a larger art form until you rise thousands of feet up in the air. So today we're going to take satellite imagery, produce a 3D model, and then embed in it a symbol or a geoglyph that follows the terrain of that model that also tells a story. I'm going to take some inspiration from The Legend of Zelda as well as my cat Blue and generate a symbol. I'm going to use Adobe Illustrator to create a vectorized image, import that into Fusion 360, then use Fusion 360 to combine the satellite imagery 3D model with our vector graphic and export them into a 3D slicing software like Bamboo Lab Studio. And then from there, we can go ahead and 3D print it or CNC it or manufacture it however you like. Starting off, we're going to jump into CoPilot Designer, which effectively has DALL-E 3 in the background. My prompt is intricate geoglyph zonai pattern of a Siamese cat, monochromatic, black and white, vector graphic, and of course the icing on the cake just to make sure it absolutely understands what we're going for here. Legend of Zelda spelled out. And yeah, you can see some of the resemblance here. This is a little too intricate, there's too much going on, so I went ahead and removed that intricate keyword and we started seeing something more simple, but still not quite there. So I wanted something a little bit more mysterious, a little more cryptic, and so I added in that keyword cryptic and got something I really liked here. This one's a bit creepy on the bottom right here, but this one I feel like hit a sweet spot of something that resembles zonai artwork to me. This one really speaks to me, so we're gonna go with this. We're gonna download it here and then jump on over to Adobe Illustrator. So it's a pretty straightforward operation we're using this for. We're gonna click on the image and we should see this panel here, image trace. If you do not see it, you can pull it down from the top and then check it off here, make sure it's selected, and then go to that panel. And once you do, it's as simple as clicking on trace. So we're gonna keep the preset default, mode black and white. It does this automatically. We can kind of see what's going on by looking at the outline. I'm gonna go ahead and just expand that out. Click OK. And we should see that we have paths generated that create this shape that we got from CoPilot Designer. And with that, we could just simply go ahead and export this. That is as simple as clicking on File, Export, Export As, and making sure your export type is in a .svg, and you can save that to the location you like for the next step. The next step is to jump into an app called TouchTerrain, which will help us easily create a 3D model of a satellite image based on a map UI interface. So all we got to do is click into it, then pick a place, something treacherous, high in elevation, something that'll give us a really good contrast when we lay that geoglyph over it. I'm going to go ahead with something like Denali. We're going to zoom out, then click on Recenter Box on Map. I'm going to zoom out, approximating a square. Doesn't have to be exact. That's good enough. I'm going to center it, maybe capture some of the geographical features I want. And with that, double check these settings. You can kind of see that it offers the ability to change resolution for the export settings, basically determining how much detail you want it to contain. I'm going to go ahead and click on CNC High Detail. Then all that's left is to export the area and download it. Jumping over to Fusion 360, we're going to go ahead and create a sketch. Select the sketch plane, insert SVG, insert from my computer, Then select the Export from CoPilot Designer. We're going to keep everything defaulted here and press OK. And in just a moment, it will load. So we're going to click on Finish Sketch. What I will also do before I extrude this is create another sketch. It's a simple square, to be quite frank here. The reason for this is I would like a base to be under all of these individual lines, because if I were to extrude them, they would be identified as separate bodies. And I want this all to be one body. So I will create a platform and then extrude and join them into the platform. So that's the thought process here. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and create the base first. It doesn't really matter how high it is, but I'm just going to say 1 millimeter here. And then once we have that, I can go ahead and select these individual lines. If the body gets in the way like this, we can just mute the body and then select. The key thing to note is that you have to hold a shift key in order for you to actually select multiple items and avoid deselecting when you click the next item. Did I miss anything? Looks like we're good to go. There it is, all selected. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and extrude. Make sure the bodies is unmuted. Make sure the operation is a join operation so that it joins to that platform underneath it. And we can enter an arbitrary distance. This can always be adjusted later. This looks great. Perfect. Let's move on to the next step. We're going to import the Denali model we exported from TouchTerrain. So we're going to go to Insert Mesh, select from my computer, then navigate to wherever you save that export from TouchTerrain. Click on Move to Ground so that it's level at the very base. And you can adjust it by using these arrows here and try to center it. It won't be perfect in this case, so we'll go ahead and scale it up once we get it somewhere approximately center. It doesn't have to be exact. And what we want to do is center it to our actual geoglyph here. The base itself will go away, so we're not going to give that too much attention. And you see the height we had exported earlier. The most important thing to note that it is taller than the highest peak. It doesn't matter how much more space you have here, as we'll see in a second. Press OK. The next step is to scale the Denali model so that we capture the entire symbol. That looks good. We can always reposition it just a tad bit. All right, at this step, what we're going to want to do is convert this Denali model into a solid. So we'll go ahead and do that by clicking on Modify, then Convert Mesh. And yes, it does have more than 10,000 triangles, and it might take a while, but it depends on how powerful your computer is. If you don't have a very powerful computer or you don't want to wait very long for it, you can always reduce the mesh. But the trade-off here is that you may have lower resolution. Now, remember we exported this in CNC high detail, so I want to maintain as much resolution as possible, so I'm going to give it some time to do its processing work. Okay, great. It's converted into a solid. And so what I'm going to do at this step is I'm going to duplicate Denali. I copied and I pasted. Command C, Command V, or you can right click it and do it from the menu that pops up. So this is a step where we're going to have the cat symbol here or geoglyph follow the terrain of Denali. We're going to do that using a combine operation, but there is a setting here we're going to click on that's going to make that happen, which is intersect. Now what I'm going for here is I'm telling Fusion 360 I want to create a model that is an intersection of the terrain with our vector symbol, and then I'm going to offset them. And you can offset them in the positive direction or negative direction to create an impression or kind of an elevation, depending on what you're going for. So I'm going to select the bodies here. The target body is going to be the cat symbol, and the tool body is going to be one of the models for the Denali terrain. That will take a minute. Yeah, sometimes it takes a little bit longer than a minute. So the last step before we send to 3D print this is that we have to combine these two. This time with a join operation. So we'll select the join operation, which is all blue here, and wait an eternity. Yeah, it takes quite a while. And once that finishes processing, we have a single body we can select. So we'll go ahead and click on File, 3D Print, select the body, then click on, well, in this case, I have my application set to Bamboo Lab Studio. You can set it to whatever you like, whatever slicer you're using, and then okay. Now that we have our model in Bamboo Lab Studio, we can kind of see that geoglyph effect showing up a lot more. If you can imagine, if you're someone who is hiking Denali or somewhere near this, you may not be able to perceive the geoglyph, but as you take a higher bird's eye view look at this, it starts to become more clear that that rock or boulder or whatever formation in the terrain is part of a larger symbol or a larger art form. And with that, we're going to slice this and print it. All I'm doing is using a 0.12 millimeter preset. I've also changed the infill pattern to be a 10% and set to triangles. You can set this to gyroid or whatever you like. I just set it to triangles in this case. But with that, you can send it to the 3D printer. And after it's done printing, I'm pretty happy with that. It looks pretty good. It kind of gives you that effect we're looking for. On the side, you can see the terrain preserved. From the very top, you can see the symbol we generated using CoPilot Designer. If you were somebody hiking this terrain and standing next to a formation, you may not know it's part of that larger art form, but there it is. Bird's eye view, symbol is clear. This idea can really scale. So for example, I took Yosemite National Park's terrain, I overlaid on top of it some Kufic calligraphy, and then I modeled it in a way that would fit a 40 by 14 piece of wood. And I'm currently cutting it out using my CNC, and it's coming out pretty great. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one.